The Nexus polyversity occupied 17 orbital platforms across 3 star systems, a monument to interstellar cooperation that had cost approximately 4 trillion credits and the sanity of every architect involved. Each platform specialized in different fields of study, connected by quantum-tunneled transit gates that theoretically couldn't malfunction but somehow did every third Tuesday, with clockwork regularity. The institution prided itself on accepting students from 847 recognized species, which sounded impressive until you realized that 600 of those species contributed exactly 1 student each, primarily for the recruitment brochure diversity photos. Humanity had joined this academic carnival roughly 22 standard years ago, shortly after making contact with the broader galactic community and discovering that their first impression involved appearing militarily insignificant, technologically backward, and biologically inadequate. The galaxy had categorized humans somewhere between harmless curiosity and why are they even here on the threat assessment scale. Humans lacked natural armor, produced no venom, couldn't survive vacuum exposure, and demonstrated an alarming vulnerability to everything from temperature fluctuations to mild bacterial infections. By galactic standards, they were tissue paper pretending to be a species. The galactic community, in its infinite wisdom and finite attention span, had decided this meant humans were safe to ignore, while they focused on more important matters like the ongoing trade disputes with the Krell Empire, and whether the Zenthi Confederacy's new military doctrine violated 12 different treaties or just 11. Platform 7 housed the engineering colleges, a sprawling complex of laboratories, fabrication facilities, and lecture halls arranged in what the original designers had called intuitive spatial organization, and everyone else called architectural sadism. The protagonist of our story occupied seat K7 in Lecture Hall Theta, currently enduring Professor Vexthor's 3-hour marathon on quantum mechanical applications in non-Euclidean geometries. The professor belonged to a species whose vocal apparatus produced frequencies that human hearing registered as vaguely threatening industrial machinery. And his teaching style combined the worst elements of condescension and incomprehensibility. She sat in the back row because tactical positioning was second nature, taking notes in actual handwriting because muscle memory was more reliable than digital devices that could be hacked, compromised, or confiscated. The data tablet in front of her displayed the lecture materials, which she'd already read twice before class because preparation prevented surprises. Her clothing was aggressively unremarkable, the kind of functional student attire that existed in every culture across every species. Comfortable enough for long lectures, practical enough for lab work, forgettable enough that witnesses would struggle to provide useful descriptions. Around her, students of various species exhibited the universal signs of academic suffering. A Thorian in the front row had activated 3 of its 6 eyes' secondary lids, a defense mechanism against terminal boredom. 2 Quelix were passing notes using bioluminescent patterns on their skin, discussing something that definitely wasn't quantum mechanics. A cluster of Vaxon were actively sleeping, which their species could do with their eyes open, an evolutionary advantage that every human student envied deeply. The lecture ended with Professor Vexthor's traditional dismissal, which translated roughly to, "Leave before I remember I hate teaching." Students evacuated with the desperate urgency of prisoners granted parole, flowing through exits in a multi-species tide of relief. She gathered her materials with unhurried precision, tablet and notebooks disappearing into a bag that looked like standard student gear, and actually was standard student gear, because the best cover identities used real props. "Surviving Vexthor's class is proof of human endurance evolution," someone commented behind her. The speaker was Jex, a Krell whose species evolved from ambush predators on a moon where everything was poisonous and aggressive. He grinned with too many teeth, his crest displaying the blue patterns that indicated friendly humor. Most species just watch the recordings at double speed. Where's the authentic suffering in that? She shouldered her bag. Besides, I need the attendance points. Nobody needs the attendance points that badly. He fell into step beside her as they joined the exodus. There's a study group meeting tonight, practical applications lab. You interested? Maybe. Got some things to handle first. Things that involve actually studying, or things that involve your mysterious extracurricular activities that nobody asks about because we value our continued existence. She smiled blandly. What extracurricular activities? Exactly. Jex peeled off at the next junction, heading toward the residential platforms. Stay dangerous, human. Stay paranoid, Krell. The transit concourse connected Platform 7 to the rest of the Nexus network, a cavernous space filled with species rushing between classes, appointments, and various degrees of academic crisis. Digital displays announced gate schedules in 40 languages simultaneously, creating a visual cacophony that gave newcomers instant headaches. She navigated through the crowd with practiced ease, watching reflections in polished surfaces, tracking movement patterns, cataloging potential threats with the automated efficiency of someone whose survival had depended on situational awareness since before she could legally vote. That's when she spotted them. 5 figures maintaining textbook surveillance formation, rotating positions every 90 seconds, using crowd density for concealment. Professional work, competent execution, completely wasted on a target who'd been trained to spot surveillance since age 14, by instructors who considered good enough to be a firing squad offense. The team leader was Vaxon, species known for tactical thinking and multispectral vision. He wore civilian clothing that almost concealed military-grade combat armor, the kind of almost that would fool casual observers and absolutely nobody with actual training. His 3 companions included a Thorian heavy weapons specialist who moved with the distinctive gait of someone carrying concealed firepower, a Zenthi whose chromatophore skin kept flickering between camouflage patterns because he was nervous, and a Quelix whose bioluminescent patterns were dampened but not entirely suppressed. The 5th member was human. That was interesting. Humanity's population in the Nexus was approximately 40,000 across all platforms, small enough that most humans recognized each other, at least by sight. She'd never seen this one before, which meant either recent arrival or deep cover. He had the look of corporate security, expensive augments visible at his temples, the kind of posture that screamed military background to anyone with pattern recognition. She altered her route, angling away from the residential platforms toward the maintenance sub-level access points. The surveillance team adjusted accordingly, trying to maintain their formation while adapting to the change. The Zenthi's skin flashed frustrated orange for half a second before he reasserted control. Amateur tells, the kind of mistakes that got people killed in actual operational environments. The maintenance sublevels existed in that weird infrastructural limbo between official facility maps and actual physical space. Academic platforms needed extensive maintenance systems, power distribution networks, atmospheric processing, waste management, all the unsexy technical necessities that kept thousands of beings alive in the void of space. These systems required access corridors, service tunnels, maintenance bays, and the kind of industrial spaces that students rarely thought about and security rarely patrolled. She badged through an access door marked Authorized Personnel Only, using credentials she'd acquired through a combination of social engineering and light computer crimes. The door opened onto a utilitarian corridor, bare metal walls lined with conduit and piping, illumination provided by efficient LED strips that created harsh shadows. The environmental systems hummed with mechanical contentment, circulating atmosphere through filters and processors. Perfect. She walked 20 meters, turned a corner, and stopped. Found a recessed alcove that housed an electrical junction box, positioned herself with clear sight lines to the corridor junction. Removed her tablet, pulled up what looked like homework but was actually a custom security interface she'd built over 6 months of careful work. 3 keystrokes accessed the maintenance sublevels camera network. 2 more created a localized loop in the footage, giving her a 30-minute window of invisibility. The surveillance team would breach the access door in approximately 40 seconds. They'd fanned out, probably planning a pincer movement that looked great in tactical simulations and worked terribly in confined spaces against prepared opposition. The Thorian would come through first, because heavy weapons specialists always went first. Fundamental doctrine that transcended species. The Vaxxon leader would follow, then the others. She set her bag down carefully, removed the tablet, and waited. 38 seconds. The door cycled open with a pneumatic hiss. The Thorian came through exactly as predicted. Weapon drawn, some kind of neural disruptor configured for non-lethal incapacitation. His species had excellent peripheral vision, decent reaction times, and the unfortunate biological limitation of requiring all 6 limbs for optimal movement. This meant drawing a weapon required stopping, which introduced a fatal half-second delay in target engagement. She shot him through the head with a weapon she'd assembled from commercial parts and engineering tolerances that would have made Professor Vex Thor weep with professional admiration. The shot was chemically propelled, ancient human technology that alien security scanners consistently failed to recognize as dangerous. The projectile was ceramic composite, designed to fragment inside soft tissue and produce catastrophic hydrostatic shock. The Thorian dropped, his weapon clattering against metal flooring, body already going through the involuntary spasms that preceded brain death. She was moving before he finished falling, closing distance on the Vaxxon leader who was still processing what had happened. Multiple eyes trying to track a threat that had appeared and killed his heavy weapons specialist in under 2 seconds. His hand went to his sidearm. Human hands were faster, grabbing his wrist, applying leverage that his species' joint structure couldn't resist. The snap was audible over the environmental system's humming. He made a sound that Vaxxon vocal apparatus produced under extreme distress, something between a shriek and a gurgle. She killed him with his own weapon, jamming the neural disruptor against his skull and activating maximum output. His brain turned to soup inside his cranium, multiple eyes rolling back in their sockets, body going limp with the boneless collapse of meat that no longer had functioning neural control. "Command, we have contact." The Zenthi was shouting into his comm, skin flashing panic red, weapon tracking wildly. "Target is hostile. Repeat, target is..." She threw the Vaxxon's corpse at him. 300 pounds of dead weight traveling at velocity made an excellent projectile weapon. The Zenthi's shot went wide, energy discharge scorching ceiling panels, and then he was buried under his former team leader's body. She closed distance while he struggled, confused Zenthi profanities muffled by approximately 1 Vaxxon's worth of corpse pinning him down. The ceramic knife came from a sheath sewn into her jacket's lining. Another primitive technology that modern security systems ignored because surely nobody used knives anymore in the age of plasma weapons and neural disruptors. The blade went through the Zenthi's right eye, penetrated his brain, scrambled everything important in his cranial cavity. She twisted once for thoroughness, withdrew the blade, wiped it clean on his clothing. 3 down, 2 to go. The Quelix had sensibly taken cover behind a support pillar. Bioluminescent patterns completely suppressed now, trying to make herself invisible through sheer force of will and species-specific camouflage capabilities. Quelix were ambush predators from oceanic environments, patient hunters who could wait for days in perfect stillness. This one didn't have days. She had approximately 30 seconds before her teammate remembered he existed and started providing supporting fire. "You're bioluminescent," she called out conversationally, checking the vaccine's weapon. "Still charged, still functional. Your camouflage is visual spectrum, but you're still producing light in wavelengths you can't suppress." Silence from behind the pillar. Somewhere in the corridor, the human mercenary was repositioning, trying to flank. His augments would give him enhanced situational awareness, tactical overlay, probably neural acceleration that boosted reaction times by 30%. Corporate security augments, expensive hardware, generally reliable. Generally. She pulled a maintenance access panel off the wall, revealing the power distribution network. Grabbed a handful of cables, yanked them free with the casual disregard for safety protocols that would have horrified any qualified electrician. Sparks fountained from severed connections, emergency lighting activated, main illumination failed. Darkness swallowed the corridor. Emergency lights provided maybe 15% of normal illumination, casting everything in red-tinged shadow. "Clever," the human mercenary said from her left. His voice carried the flat affect of someone with active neural augmentation, emotions suppressed for optimal combat performance. "Cutting power. But my augments include low-light vision." "I know." She moved right while he spoke, using sound discipline that years of training had made reflexive. "But your augments are networked, which means they're transmitting data to your team's tactical server, which means they're broadcasting electromagnetic signals in frequencies that absolutely show up on maintenance sub-level environmental sensors if you know how to access them." She fired 3 times at the EM signature her tablet highlighted, adjusted aim based on the first shot's impact, walked the next 2 into center mass. The mercenary grunted, augmented reflexes trying to compensate for projectiles moving faster than his neural processors could track. He got his weapon up, fired blind, energy bolts carving molten lines through conduit and piping. She rolled left, came up beside the Quelix's pillar, found the target exactly where thermal imaging said she'd be. The Quelix was fast, inhumanly fast, tentacles lashing out with enough force to crack bone. She caught one, redirected it into the pillar's edge, felt the limb break. The Quelix shrieked, bioluminescent patterns flaring in distress, giving away her position. The human mercenary's next shot went through where the Quelix had been and where she wasn't anymore. The Quelix took the energy bolt center mass, body convulsing as neural systems failed, bioluminescence fading like a dying star. 4 down. "You killed your own teammate," she observed, circling through the darkness, using the environmental sounds to mask her movement. "Acceptable losses." His voice came from a different position now. He was good, moving quietly for someone wearing combat armor. "You're not a student." "I'm absolutely a student. Currently maintaining a 3.7 GPA in engineering, which is harder than murder by a significant margin." "Military background?" "Special operations, probably." "Terran intelligence?" "Classified." She watched his EM signature, tracked his movement pattern. He was boxing her in, herding her toward a corner where his superior firepower would eliminate her mobility advantage. Textbook tactics, exactly what she'd have done in his position. "What's the contract? Who wants me and why?" "Trafficking ring. Someone wants a human specimen for biological research. Apparently your species has interesting properties. Contract was 50,000 credits for live acquisition." "Flattering price point." She let him push her toward the corner, playing into his assumptions. What do they want to research? Our fragile bone structure? Our pathetic immune systems? The fact that half the galaxy's atmospheric compositions give us allergic reactions? Pain tolerance. He was close now, maybe 5 meters. Humans process pain differently. Neural pathways that don't trigger shutdown responses. They want to study it. Ah. She stopped retreating. So basically torture research. Good to know my kidnapping would serve science. Nothing personal? He stepped around the corner, weapon raised, low light vision showing him a target with her hands raised in apparent surrender. Just business. She activated the makeshift explosive she'd assembled from the severed power cables, capacitor banks stripped from junction boxes, and the kind of reckless disregard for electrical safety that made her engineering professors weep. The improvised device wasn't sophisticated, just stored electrical energy released suddenly through a minimum resistance path that happened to include several kilograms of metal shrapnel from disassembled conduit sections. The explosion was contained, directed, and absolutely catastrophic within a 3-meter radius. The human mercenaries' combat armor handled the shrapnel reasonably well. His nervous system handled the electromagnetic pulse less successfully. His augments failed, neural interfaces flooding his brain with error codes and system crashes, enhanced reflexes reverting to baseline human reaction times. She shot him 4 times while he was still processing the sensory overload, ceramic projectiles punching through armor at joints where flexibility required reduced protection. Throat, both armpits, groin, anywhere major arteries lived close to the surface. He dropped, bleeding from multiple wounds, augments sparking and failing. His eyes found hers in the emergency lighting's red glow, expression transitioning from tactical assessment to dawning understanding to nothing at all. As blood loss achieved what his enhanced physiology was desperately trying to prevent. 5 for 5. Personal best time, actually, though the circumstances had been advantageous. She stood in the wreckage of the corridor, surrounded by 5 corpses and enough evidence to trigger investigations from 17 different law enforcement agencies, and assessed her situation with the clinical detachment of someone whose job occasionally involved industrial-scale murder. First priority, stop the bleeding. She'd taken minor shrapnel from her own improvised explosive, because physics didn't care about whose side you were on. Nothing critical, just annoying lacerations that would require medical attention she absolutely couldn't seek through official channels. Field dressing from the emergency kit in her bag would suffice. Second priority, contain the evidence. 5 bodies, multiple weapons, enough forensic traces to write doctoral dissertations. The maintenance sub-level's environmental sensors had recorded everything. And while she'd looped the camera footage, the sensors logged temperature spikes, pressure changes, atmospheric composition fluctuations. All of that data lived in databases that security could access. Third priority, disposal. Bodies were heavy, conspicuous, and leaked fluids that DNA analysis could identify. Industrial facilities offered disposal options if you knew where to look and didn't mind violating approximately 40 safety regulations. She started with the human mercenary, stripping his augments because they contained mission data, tactical logs, probably communication records with whoever had hired him. The augments came out with the help of her ceramic knife and a willingness to perform field surgery that would have horrified medical professionals. She bagged the components separately, made notes about encryption protocols she'd need to crack later. The bodies went into a maintenance cart she'd appropriated from a storage closet, the kind of equipment that maintenance crews used for hauling components and parts. 5 bodies fit if you were willing to engage in aggressive spatial optimization and creative limb arrangement. She covered them with a thermal blanket designed for equipment storage, which had the side benefit of blocking thermal imaging. The blood was more problematic. multiple species, different biochemistry, all of it pooled across the corridor floor in patterns that forensic analysis would reconstruct into detailed combat timelines. She used industrial cleaning solution from the maintenance supply closet, the kind of chemical cocktail designed to handle everything from lubricant spills to biological contamination. The solution broke down organic compounds at the molecular level, reducing blood to constituent elements that environmental sensors would register as normal atmospheric particulates. She scrubbed with focused intensity, working through the scene methodically, destroying evidence with the same systematic approach she'd used to create it. Scorch marks from energy weapons got attributed to electrical fires caused by her improvised explosive. Structural damage became equipment malfunction, the kind of maintenance emergency that platforms this size experienced regularly. The weapons went into a separate bag, components separated, energy cells drained, everything rendered non-functional through applied force and creative disassembly. She dumped them in different recycling streams, spreading the evidence across systems that wouldn't correlate isolated components into coherent weapon profiles. The cart rolled smoothly once she'd balanced the load, wheels designed to handle heavy equipment transporting heavy corpses with equal efficiency. She navigated through maintenance corridors, using routes she'd mapped over 18 months of careful exploration, avoiding areas with active surveillance, timing her movements to coincide with maintenance shift changes. The atmospheric processing plant occupied Platform 7's lower levels, a sprawling facility that converted carbon dioxide to oxygen, filtered contaminants, and generally kept thousands of beings breathing without thinking about it. The plant operated continuously, supervised by automated systems and a skeleton crew of maintenance engineers who mostly monitored displays and responded to alerts. She accessed a secondary processing line through credentials she'd acquired from a maintenance engineer she'd befriended during first-year orientation. The processing line handled waste gases, contaminants, anything that needed to be broken down to constituent atoms and either recycled or vented to space. The system accepted input through loading hoppers designed for bulk waste. No questions asked, no records kept beyond basic mass flow data. The bodies went in one at a time, fed into a system that reduced them to component atoms through a combination of thermal processing, chemical breakdown, and plasma reduction. Organic matter became carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, trace elements, all of it sorted by atomic weight and routed to appropriate storage or disposal. The vaccine became fertilizer-based stock for the agricultural platforms. The thorium's heavy metals went to industrial recycling. The Quelix's exotic biochemistry triggered contamination warnings that the system automatically compensated for by routing outputs to hazardous waste containment. The human mercenaries' augments presented complications, sophisticated electronics that the system wasn't designed to process. She removed them before disposal, added them to her collection of components that would require separate handling. His body joined the others, converted to raw materials, identity erased at the atomic level. 2 hours after the ambush, she emerged from the maintenance sub-levels carrying a bag of laundry because that's what students did. They transported dirty clothing between dormitories and cleaning facilities. She looked tired, slightly disheveled, completely unremarkable. Another human student finishing another day of academic suffering, notable only in her absolute lack of notability. The residential platform's corridors bustled with evening activity, students studying, socializing, engaging in the complex social dynamics that transcended species boundaries. She nodded to acquaintances, deflected invitations to study groups, maintained the careful facade of normal student existence. Her quarters were standard institutional housing, designed for human occupancy with the kind of bland functionality that characterized student accommodations across every culture. Small living space, sleeping area, basic sanitation, desk with data terminal. She'd personalized it minimally because extensive personalization suggested long-term investment, and her assignment had always been temporary. Even if temporary had stretched into years. Her roommate was out, probably at the library or the recreational facilities, or engaged in one of the 17 clubs she'd joined because making friends was apparently something normal people did. This suited her perfectly. She needed privacy for the next phase. The mercenaries' augments connected to her laptop through universal interface adapters, hardware designed to communicate with any system regardless of manufacturer specifications. The augment's security was sophisticated, military-grade encryption that would take conventional approaches weeks to crack. She used unconventional approaches, backdoors that intelligence agencies had developed and classified, exploits that existed in firmware because vendors prioritized functionality over security, techniques that her instructors had taught her before she'd been old enough to legally purchase alcohol. 40 minutes later, she had full access to the mission data. The contract had come through intermediaries, anonymous buyers using cryptocurrency accounts, traced to 17 different jurisdictions. The mission parameters specified live acquisition, minimal damage, delivery to coordinates that corresponded to a cargo facility in the Outer Rim territories. Payment structure included bonuses for intact specimens, penalties for delays, standard trafficking contract language. The buyers wanted research subjects, humans specifically, ideally female, age range 18 to 25. No specific physical requirements beyond basic health. The research purpose was listed as biological analysis of pain processing and stress response mechanisms under controlled conditions, which was academic language for torture research. Someone wanted to understand why humans didn't break easily, why pain tolerance was so high, why stress responses didn't include shutdown mechanisms that other species demonstrated. They wanted to study it, replicate it, probably weaponize it. She copied the data to encrypted storage, formatted the augment's memory, destroyed the hardware with applied voltage that melted circuits into slag. The mission data would go to her handler through secure channels, another piece of intelligence about galactic black markets and human trafficking networks. Someone else would analyze it, identify targets, plan operations. Her job was simpler: survive, maintain cover, eliminate threats when they emerged. She showered, washing away the last traces of violence, watching blood and chemical residue circle the drain. Her reflection in the mirror showed minor injuries, bruises developing where shrapnel had impacted, nothing that wouldn't heal within a few days, nothing that would raise questions in species unfamiliar with human injury patterns. The evening stretched out, quiet and unremarkable. She made dinner from synthesized protein and vegetables that tasted like the concept of food rather than actual food, ate while reviewing coursework. Professor Vexthor's quantum mechanics problem sets required solutions by morning, differential equations that would occupy her mind with something other than the systematic murder of 5 beings. Mathematics was pure, clean. Problems had solutions, equations balanced, theorems proved or disproved through logical process. Unlike intelligence work, where nothing was clean, every action created consequences, and the only proof of success was continued survival. Her roommate returned around 2200 hours, bubbling with enthusiasm about some social event that had involved too much fermented beverage and not enough judgment. She listened, made appropriate responses, maintained the friendly but distant relationship that her cover identity required. The roommate suspected nothing, saw only a quiet engineering student who kept odd hours and didn't party much. Perfect. Midnight passed. Her roommate slept peacefully, unaware that her quarters mate had killed 5 people earlier that day. The station continued its endless orbit, platforms maintaining position through automated thrusters, thousands of students sleeping or studying or engaging in activities that students engaged in across every culture. In security offices, missing person reports began filtering through automated systems. 5 individuals failed to check in with their transport vessel. Scheduled. Departure passed without them boarding. Preliminary investigation initiated. The system flagged them as low priority because freelance contractors missed deadlines constantly. No one connected their disappearance to Platform 7 because surveillance showed nothing. Sensors recorded only equipment malfunctions. Evidence pointed nowhere useful. The investigation would stall, file into archives, eventually close due to lack of leads. 5 people would be missing, status unknown, presumed lost to the various hazards that made freelance mercenary work dangerous. Their families, if they had families, would receive standardized notifications about unfortunate circumstances and official regrets. She accessed her secure communication terminal, typed a brief mission report in code that looked like engineering homework notes. 5 hostiles neutralized. Trafficking network identified, requesting further instructions. The message compressed, encrypted, routed through 17 proxy servers across multiple systems, arrived at a destination that officially didn't exist. The response came within minutes. Continue mission. Maintain cover. New intelligence suggests trafficking network has deeper penetration in academic institutions. Investigation ongoing. She acknowledged, deleted the exchange, returned to her problem sets. Differential equations waited for no one, not even undercover intelligence operatives with body counts that would horrify their classmates. Somewhere in the Terran intelligence headquarters, buried beneath layers of classification and bureaucratic obfuscation, her service record updated. 5 confirmed hostile eliminations, 0 complications, 0 exposure. Performance rated exceptional, which in intelligence terminology meant didn't get caught. The galaxy continued spinning, oblivious to the fact that one unremarkable human student on Platform 7 had just eliminated 5 professional hunters and erased the evidence with the casual efficiency of someone cleaning their quarters. Other students studied for exams, worried about grades, navigated social dynamics and academic pressures. She did all of those things too, because that's what cover identities required. The difference was that her backup plan for failed exams involved significantly more violence than normal students contemplated. The Nexus Polyversity welcomed students from 847 species, provided them education and opportunity, prepared them for productive roles in galactic society. It accomplished this noble mission while remaining cheerfully ignorant that it had enrolled human intelligence operatives disguised as students, wolves hiding among sheep who thought wolves were extinct. And perhaps that was the most human thing of all. The ability to be exactly what people expected while being something else entirely. To smile and attend classes and maintain perfect cover while systematically eliminating threats to humanity's interests. Earth had sent its children to the stars, carrying textbooks and weapons, education and training, the ability to blend in and the capacity to kill when necessary. The galaxy had welcomed them as students, as harmless newcomers, as species too fragile to matter in the grand equation of galactic power. They'd made assumptions based on appearance, on preliminary biological assessments, on the comfortable belief that they understood what humans were. They were learning otherwise, one disappeared trafficking team at a time, one mysteriously solved security problem at a time, one unexplained incident that security couldn't quite explain at a time. But they were learning slowly, because humans were patient and careful and very, very good at appearing harmless right up until the moment they weren't. The engineering student finished her problem sets around 300 hours, submitted them through the academic network, and finally allowed herself to sleep. Tomorrow would bring new classes, new assignments, new opportunities to maintain her cover identity. And if it also brought new threats, well, she had a cleaning protocol for that too. Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5.